Hello, hello. How's it going? A little bit late. Audio chain issues. Love it. Love to see it. But we're live. We're doing it. So interesting things have kind of transpired in the world of Servo. If you are uninitiated, Servo is I think I would describe it as an experimental browser written in Rust that was started in the Mozilla Foundation. When COVID was hitting and all the layoffs were happening, the team that was working on Servo was laid off, and they basically dropped the project, which was unfortunate. And it kind of stagnated. And I was interested in Servo as a project because of the memory guarantees that come with Rust. And it's sort of just a different thing than all of the other implementations. So I was excited to see where it would go. As we've gotten into Tori, and as I've gotten personally into Rust, being able to have crates that you pull together into a browser, but also have other potential use cases is really cool. To where I think it has a very unique implementation in other systems as compared to something like Chrome embedded CEF, where you would have to you're kind of bringing the whole browser along for the ride. I think there's a lot of interesting use cases there, which has me excited. So I've been keeping an eye on Servo, and we've looked at it on stream a few times. And we've talked about this a few times. I think it's starting to happen. For a few reasons, it's sort of gotten a new lease on life, and there's a couple. They've been making slow progress, or as slow as I guess relative, but they've been making progress, and as part of that progress, they've also been working with a bunch of the members on the Tori team to see what it would be like to pull out pieces and use it as a web view as well. So there's been some developments there, and I kind of want to look into it. I thought this would be a fun thing to kind of go through on stream. We still have stuff open from last time. Let us close. We did end up. We can take a real quick peek at it. Neurosnap. Star effects. I think I merged in. Yep. Oh, interesting. I might need to come back to that and look and see what's happening. But it passed in the PR. Nice. So we got ecosystem tests, which is nice. Okay. Anyways, Servo. So let's look at Servo. Servo Blog. They've been working on improving stability and adding, going through all the different CSS implementations. So what's interesting is if you could use this as a web view in Tori, I wonder if there's a reality where you can if you pull in something like Tailwind CSS, it's a utility library that has a whole bunch of CSS classes, or it's a whole bunch of CSS written to where you can use the utility classes, and there's functions within the library to then tree shake out all of the pieces of CSS that you don't need. What if we could do that with our embedded browser? I don't know if it makes sense, but those kind of things make me very excited to see where this ends up going. But this is the one I wanted to look at. Not too many days ago, and I think back in November is probably the last time we looked at it. But yeah, look at that. Yeah, So Yue got, I'm pretty sure Yue was the one that set up this servo ride demo. Or in concert with Yue? Then maybe this is what I'm thinking about. So this is what I was saying. There's been some interactions between, and I think he's check out the stream where we had a chat. We talked about servo on that stream. That actually would be a good one too if you're interested further in this topic. We discussed some of that in here, and that was like December, maybe? Is that December already? Hey, let's look. We can do a little bit of self promo. Y'all won't mind, right? But that was a really fun conversation, and I want to make sure to share that and highlight it because I think everybody else would be interested in it. Here we go. Really should like do some more interlinking too. I know you can do that within YouTube or whatever, but anyways, there's always more things to do. So some of the things that like with an integration within Tori, these would be pieces that would be interested in. Servo web views and the positioning of them, transparency. And then the other thing has been the multiple web views. And it looks like the LAN looks like they've been working on sleuthing through the code to find what did they say? They found almost all of the assumptions where this, or all the places where this assumption was made, because they had this assumption that only one web view was active. So that was sort of like built into Servo. So changing some expectations or assumptions, and then you need to address any of the underlying pieces that touches. But so there's a couple things I want to look at today. This is cool. We're gonna keep checking in on the progress. I love to see this. And appreciate all the work that everybody's doing on this. I want to try the ride demo. It's probably gonna look pretty similar to the other demos that we've seen. So it's a little bit more of like, this is cool. And then there's something else that we're gonna open this. He's got something else cooked up that I want to try too. Whoa, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. I wonder if it is in, let's see here, Servo. Is there a PR for this? It appears that Linda? They're kind of all over the place to do a whole bunch of stuff. That's neat. Nice. That would explain the pup picture. Cool. It seems like they're working on it. I thought UA was more involved with it, but I know there's just so much work to do that you can't do everything. So I appreciate the. I wonder if they're more involved with the. Doesn't say they're specifically involved with the Galileo. So maybe a bit of background. And I think they say here, yeah. So don't know if they actually specifically say it in here anywhere. It's part of the Linux Foundation. I don't see it. So this is a large project. It takes some concerted effort to continue to move it forward. And a group called Galia has received. They weren't really contracted necessarily, I don't think, but they've. They are a company that works on open source in many ways. I don't know if they do other I'm presuming they do other consultancy, but open source consultancy. So there's a few groups or bodies that are sponsoring this work. One of them is NLNet. This foundation is is it a sister corporate or a sister company too? I always forget this. I always forget how these foundations are attached to each other. Tori has a foundation. Wow, I'm just completely blanking on all these words. Here, let's go to Tori. Pretty sure we have it in our about section. Yeah. So Tori, yeah, okay, they are slightly separate. The Commons Conservancy is the foundation that has that's it's registered under what would be the words? It facilitates basically the Tori program, and the Commons Conservancy is related to NLNet. You can see, hey, talking about UA a bunch. These are all the original board members. We have since voted in new board members at the like 6 months ago or so now. And so, long story short, the NLNet is a group that's somewhat related to the group that Tori is working with to establish the foundation, or that worked with to establish the foundation. They're like sister nonprofits, basically. Or like related nonprofits. Yeah, they work with many different organizations and programs. Either way, NLNet has helped out with Tori in funding some of the grants or donations to do the security audits. So NLNet and their governance structure has sponsored a bunch of this type of work, where we're sort of pushing like low level ecosystem things forward for sort of the public good. So they've been helping sponsor Tori, and they've also been I think, is it last year sometime they started sponsoring work to move Servo forward. Anyways, so long story short, looks like this person has a branch. It looks like we merged stuff in, so maybe the demo's on the main branch now. Examples. Okay. Fixed type error on building. Okay. Okay. So they were trying to run this example. What is the commit history for this? Ah, okay, okay. So there's a little bit of like multiple people working on this. That makes sense. That makes way more sense. Nice, yeah. I hope I'm saying their name right. Delane? I think it's Delane. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. Nice. Cool. Let's give that a shot. I have honestly no idea if it's going to end up working, but they've been doing a whole bunch of work on this branch. And it looks like there is Windows support, so I think we might be able to run it. So let us increase the size. Why aren't you working? Different computer. I've been so new keyboard. It has Bluetooth, which I've been using to switch between. You can have like multiple Bluetooth connections with it, so I've been using it to switch between computers, which is nice. But I'm having trouble separating in my brain when I need to use the hotkeys for Mac and when I need to use the hotkeys for Windows. It was easier when they're separate keyboards because I could, different keyboard, my brain would make the context switch. Here up, literally pressing keybind and it switches to a different computer, and now I have to remember to use different keybinds. Anyways, okay, so Tori apps, we should have yep. Let's go ahead and fetch. GFP is a alias for get fetch and get pull. And then we want to check out this branch. So let's go ahead and do git checkout. And then I think we basically just do this. It's kind of interesting that they put it right in the README. On Servo example. Nice. Just let's go for it. Let's see what happens. So a bunch downloading. This might take a hot minute. Actually, speaking of which, we are doing a compile. Let me. I think something happened when. Whoop, that's not what I meant to do. I used to. Oh. Okay, hopefully that helps. We're doing the fetch now. That might take a little bit. I used to, as part of my hotkey, change the process priority. On Windows, you can give a process a higher priority. So, like when I'm doing something like this. Oh, that way. Sometimes forget that I've moved sides. When we're doing something that has got heavy compute, being able to prioritize my screen sharing software, OBS. Sometimes still though my camera lags out, which is kind of annoying. Seems to be fine though. I think we're good. I mean, we're just doing the fetch right now. We're not doing the compile, but changing the process priority helps a whole ton. Man, this fetch is fetching a lot here. So I would expect video look nice. Oh, this is kind of cool. All right, so they've got like a very specific special README just for this. I imagine they would smush the READMEs together at some point in the future. Please follow the instructions in Servo build setup to build a successful copy first. So we might have issues. We might potentially have issues. which is fine. I kind of would have been surprised if it just worked from the get. I don't remember if I've tried to run Servo on this computer. I don't think I have. There's been a bunch of work in trying to improve the setup in a cross-platform way. So the other thing, I guess, well, this is running its fetch and then compile, and we'll see what the errors come up with. The other thing that I wanted to look at was UA has also been poking around with this. That description. Basically using interesting. Basically using Servo and what was eventually, I think the expectation was when they were writing Servo was experimental grounds to slowly shift the Firefox browser implementation. And I think some of that did happen and maybe is still happening. But part of what they're poking up here is basically building it on a building a browser, I guess. I mean, it's on top of Servo, so there's a lot of work to go in Servo. There's a lot of work to go in implementing a browser, so it's probably going to remain experimental for quite some time. Oh my goodness. Okay. We are doing some work. Interesting. All right. So I think we're going to try this. I have run the install, so I should have. I mean, I already had some of these, but I should have all of these now. So in theory, we should be able to clone this and run it. In theory. And pretty much we're just doing cargo run at this point. There is a note. Current demo works best on Mac. But there is the plan to focus on Windows as the main target support. And as far as I understand, Windows should work. And we can give it a shot. And also kind of what's nice about doing it on stream is, I don't expect everything to work from the get-go. But if we do run into any issues, that potentially gives, assuming we figure out what the issue is, that gives a solution for others to try it as well. So if somebody else is interested in it, I'm going all rainbow. See, that's the thing I need to deal with. OBS. I don't know if my audio clips. I need to look into that still. I'm assuming my audio is fine, but my video appears to not be. I wonder if I can like bump up the priority on the driver or something. Because if I'm doing some heavy compute, this seems to happen. And it seems to be a more recent thing. I don't think it always did this. We're almost done though. And I'm fingers crossed we don't have to like do anything that would require a restart, because that's gonna kind of be a hard blocker. We kinda can't restart the computer if we're streaming. Is there anything else we can poke about? It's almost done. Is there anything else we can poke about though? there's a bunch of these things that are going to be very interesting once they land, and like low level requirements for things that would be helpful. So off-screen rendering. So when you have a native app and you have like the OAuth flow or a pop-up or something like that. Okay, we have some warnings. That doesn't mean that it's not going to work. We're almost there. We're almost there. We got this. I guess that's kind of all that I wanted to look at in here. A lot of low-level work. It's cool to see the progress. I don't think there's too much we can explore though. Okay. We have a bunch of warnings. It seems to be finishing though, and we did get a window popping up. That looks like the example. I would call this working. That's pretty sweet. From the first Git, I might have done some of this, where are we now? I might have done some of this initial setup stuff on this computer, so that might be why it worked on the first Git go. If you're running this on Windows, you might need to do something like, this where you're installing LLVM, CMake, and curl kind of thing. But it's working. It's working. I don't know if there's too much more we can do with it. It's in a Winit window, and we can't, like, it's a Servo browser, so we don't have, like, the Edge or the Chrome DevTools. I mean, this is kind of cool. So we can't, like, right-click and inspect or anything. So I don't think there's really much more we can do with it, but it works. I'm a little bit curious to see, like, implementation wise. Let's poke a bit into what goes into this example and how it's wired up. Because I am a little bit curious about that. So we have, when we were poking around with Rye a few months ago at this point, I think, we were looking at using multiple web views in a single window. So we're a little bit familiar with this, where, like, with this implementation at this low level piece, we're familiar with this raw window handle because that was the key, and this shared type was the key to being able to implement the multiple web views, because we could separate out and it's the same thing Servo was doing. Separating out the previous assumption that one window controlled one web view, and you know that also kind of controlled the event loop. So separating that out and having a shared type, the raw window handle, helped with that, and we were familiar with that. So we set up the window. That's interesting that this is just on Mac. Very interesting. WebView Builder, and then we run the event loop. So we're wiring up the web view from Servo, and then handling messages. So, I mean, theoretically, there's not much that goes into this, but like, these lines of code have a lot of work behind them. I can guarantee that. There's a whole lot of effort that went into, you know, like this. So one line of code you get to use. Somebody else put in the work to make that happen. So we have Cocoa App Kit for Mac. We've got some Objective-C also for Mac. We got a lot of Mac stuff here. and there's a web view builder and a web view builder servo. So that would be the bit that I'm curious to poke around a little bit with. All right, this is where you can kind of see the different implementations now, and Android is starting to crop up here because Tori v2 is expecting to have mobile support, so Android and iOS. The browser on Android is not the same browser that you would use if you're working off of your Windows box or if you're working off of your Mac. I guess Mac is going to be iOS, but so WebView 2 is Windows, WK WebView WebKit, WK WebView would be Linux. WebKit GTK it's going to be iOS, right? Now I'm doubting myself. Does it actually say in here? One's for Linux, one's for Windows. Or excuse me, one's for Linux. But we've got a Linux, we've got a Windows, and we've got a Mac. Android is its own separate piece, and we're using Kotlin bindings for that. And then Servo. So this is sort of the new piece. And you can see raw window handle makes an appearance. And we pull in some of the pieces from Servo. So compositing is the that comes back to the low level assumption. If we search for compositing, so something that in an app context you have an idea of having multiple windows, but we want to have one server process or one servo process. I'm presuming is the expectation, but the component known as I see. So the component known as compositor is the thing that handles user input and drawing. And for historical reasons, it was one compositor to one window. And constellation, yeah, exactly. So constellation is associated with one compositor, and compositor is tied to the event loop. So this is kind of how we know that that relationship exists. We can see the other little pieces of Servo come together, and this is where I'm curious how things end up, because Rust sort of has effectively like tree shaking built into it. You can have configuration or like code paths that just aren't used in a certain release target that just end up getting compiled away. So I'm really curious, like that would be really cool if we could, rather than we could ship a whole browser, but it doesn't actually need to be the whole browser if we're not using it, which is kind of a really cool implementation if you're nerding out like I am about it. And this is all sort of specific to the implementation. I mean, we've got effectively have the servo piece, and it needs to interact with the window. And we establish the raw window handle. At some point, where are you? Was that a star import? No. New web view, new window. Where's the? Must come into this, and this gets passed in. Let's search for handle. Yeah, okay. Window.raw window handle. So we create native widget from RWH. RWH. I think that has to do with, we saw that it mentioned in the example. Raw window handle. That makes sense. So create the widget from a raw window handle. So we have the window, give it, and we from the window we can get the raw window handle, and then we pass it to Servo to create that connection, connecting Servo to the window itself. And I think everything else is sort of just like implementation details. If you resize the window, you need to deal with that in the web view. Like mouse tracking stuff, I guess. So tying the implementations in Servo to the window itself. Cool. I don't know that there's too much more that we want to poke around with in here. Better. That looks familiar if you are at all familiar with agent strings. Yeah, mouse position, handle winit events. So you end up having basically the Servo web view and the winit window. They each build up their own context. You tie them together via this raw window handle, and then you effectively have this communication channel where winit, the windowing library, and Servo, the web view, in this case the web view library, effectively, they each create events and they watch each other events. So like if you click close on the window, you know, all the Servo stuff needs to be cleaned up too. So I think that's, you know, like, are we moving into the web view? Are we moving into the menu bar type stuff? So I don't think there's anything else that is going to be useful in here. Or I mean, that's going to be valuable for us to take a look at. Resources. Okay. This is cool. I am like, just the fact that this exists is really nifty. And did it oh, okay. All right, there we go. I thought it froze for a second there. I'm like, oh no. And honestly, like, that resize feels really nice. There's just a little bit of the white that you see on the edge where it's like needs to expand the window. So that white you see is actually like the web view window is the web view itself is expanding to fit the space. And then anything within that web view also gets a redraw. Or you know, that's where if you're doing web dev, you get the media queries to determine the size. So that white that you see behind is basically if you ran and opened up a winit window without anything in it, you basically just have like this white background, like as a default. Okay, I think we're good with this. I don't know that there's too much else we can gain by digging into it. This is probably not something that you're going to be able to use in the near term. Probably not going to be something that you can use in the medium, maybe even long term. This is a long process. So we'll keep checking in on it. I appreciate all the work that everybody's doing, and I want to, I think it's interesting. I hope it's interesting to y'all, but I also want to just highlight all the work that people are doing. Because it's really cool to see this. And having the options and competition in the space is nice. And I don't see the PR. So I suspect this is a branch that people are, like, this is the long-term feature branch that people are working on. You know, and then there, as far as Rise specifically, and it's tied to Tori. This has been a good bit of effort too. So there's lots of things happening at this level. once Servo gets to the point where we can actually start embedding it in a big way, it would have to get implemented in Rye, and then in some way exposed up into Tori to where you can like opt. I'm presuming it's going to effectively be an opt-in situation where I want to opt in and use Servo. So even if Servo gets to the point where it's going to be usable in this context, there's still going to be work to actually like surface it in Tori proper. So unless you're using Rye directly, it's going to be a little bit of time, but that's okay. So we're only 40 minutes in. I want to give this a shot. I don't know. I think it's going to be the same situation where we're not going to see too much going into it, and we can look at the code a little bit. But that's okay. We might just have a little bit shorter stream today, which is perfectly fine. Whoop. Perfectly fine. We're going to make a directory. If you are new to the stream, the way I set up my directory structure matches how GitHub has it set up. And then, whoops, wrong computer. This is that paste. I match the directory structure on GitHub, and then I use a command prompt called Starship. Highly recommend. It's been real nice. You might start to see a pattern here. Rust powered. If it's written in Rust, I'm usually interested in it because it means that it's typically something that I can use both on Windows and Mac. And it's, for the most part, I like to have the environments close-ish. I mean, there's going to be operating system differences that it's not going to be perfect, but it's just nice for working with your tools when you're not having to continue like lower the burden of context switching essentially. So in my command prompt, I can switch what the command prompt is saying based on the context. And if I'm in a specific directory structure, I can convert that directory structure to something, or to text effectively. So when I'm in my GitHub directory, then it actually puts the full URL in. So then I can do something like yippee. And now it has worked in the past. I don't know if they did something to like change it or break it. I can't click it in here. On Mac, I can actually click it. But I can use this in like copy paste. So it's a quick way to go to it. And on my Mac, I can actually like control click it. Okay, so we've got that cloned. And we did the scoop install. Yeah, no, control click doesn't work. I don't know. I feel like it did at one point. I'm pretty certain it did. Something updated and broke it, I'm assuming, and I don't know if it was intentional or unintentional. But like, I can't anymore. Again, it works on Mac, so like, there's definitely something going on there. But anyways, hey Tony, good to see you. Let's do cargo run. Again, we're gonna have to do probably the same-ish steps that we were doing before. You can see here, like, we're actually grabbing servo stuff, and we're grabbing, I think on the other one we had like Rust bindgen and LLVM or something like that. And we have dependencies installed, but we're basically, I think what's happening here is in Rust, when you publish a crate or publish code on Rust, you are publishing the source files. There is, in the JavaScript ecosystem, you might opt to publish built assets. So you'd run it through Webpack or run it through Vite. And in that process, you strip out a bunch of potentially useful information for the compiler. it has its trade-offs, but that also potentially means that in bundling it into a package in the JavaScript ecosystem, if you were just working with like low-level JavaScript that's non-bundler specific, it could theoretically work in more contexts. So there's reasons to do it because the ecosystem in JavaScript is the way it is. In Rust, you're pushing up the source code. Everybody's working off of ideally you have like a minimum Rust version that you can run this off of. And that means that when you do the cargo run, it is actually fetching all the source code for each one of these and compiling each one. You do get the incremental builds, which is nice. So any of your dependencies, it'll likely only build those once. And then it's just rebuilding your code every time you do another cargo run. When you have big projects like Servo, that can start to take a lot of time. If you are literally compiling all of Servo along with all of your code in Tori, for example, especially if you don't have a super powerful computer, like it might be hours. And I mean, we're still even doing bits and pieces here. So part of that work here is, and the reason I think it's grabbing those Git repositories is pre-compiling. So they've been experimenting with it for Moz.js, or to build the C+ parts of it as a static library. Rainbow puke. Are you seeing this, Tony? Do you see the like rainbow effect? Because lovely computer things. Hopefully the audio is still good. I think my audio is fine when this happens, but I'm not terribly certain about that. Hopefully it's working. It is still glitching. Audio is fine? Cool. Oh, hey, Astra. Good to see you stop by. So I think when we are downloading from Git, what we were seeing up here, lots of scrolling. My presumption is that this is what's happening. When we're doing updating from Git repository, I'm pretty certain what's happening is we are grabbing precompiled stuff. So we're doing something like building a dynamic library or grabbing C++ static parts. I'm pretty certain that's what's happening. And that means that we don't need to compile Moz.js every time we do a cargo run. So somebody, it's done in CI upstream or something, and then anybody that's pulling this in can use the like dynamic library or the precompiled bits rather than having to compile all of their own pieces. So the real low-level dependencies is where this ends up being useful, I think. At least based on my, like it's not insignificant work to set this up, as I understand. So the benefit of doing it is much higher when you have a low-level library that there's many downstream users using it. And this is something too that we've explored in Tori. Hey, okay, we got it. We got a build, and the title of the window. Yippee! Woo! So you can see there's not much going on here. They do know it works best on Mac because it tries to customize the traffic light buttons to be seamless in the window. So you can see in the demo we get I'm assuming he's gonna hover over the traffic light buttons at some point. Why is this taking so long to load? It's like broken. Weird. to the GitHub layer. Resources. Where does he have this? .cargo, build, demo. Raw. Assets. Okay. Oh, it's just uploaded. Well, that's kind of annoying. I don't know why this is not loading. Oh, there we go. Okay, now it's working. Weird. I'm guessing that if you have, yeah, so the traffic light buttons, the minimize, close, maximize in, or full screen in Mac, it's set up with Mac. You can see on Windows we don't have that. So that's sort of the, like, that's, I think, the big difference at the moment. I anticipate that the expectation is this is going to be useful for both Mac and Windows, but starting on Windows, or Windows is the main target support at the moment. I'm not sure why, but I kind of like it because I do use Windows more than I think many folks in the dev community do, or at least in the circles that I run in. So we don't have much going on. There's no menu buttons or anything, but that's to come. I don't think there's much more we can do with this. Has anybody else tried this? This is pretty cool, and I would love to see more work on it. And if anybody is interested in helping out with that, I'm sure UA would be appreciative. A couple of people have already poked around with it. I think those are the big pieces, though. So Servo is being revived, or it has been revived, and it's seeing progress. And there's the experimental mini browser. There's UA has started tinkering around with Yippee as like an official browser. And then there's work moving forward and getting implemented in Rye. I suspect it's not going to be lifted up in a Tori until it can support multiple web views and multiple windows. So that, I mean, at the earliest, honestly, that's probably going to be like a V3 thing, Tori V3. All of your Rust GUI apps are in your Win environment, but the rest are in WSL Ubuntu environment. Yeah, and I think that's the other thing. Many of the folks that use Windows, I think, tend towards using WSL. And not saying that's a bad thing, but like that implementation is good. I can understand why. But I work in both, so it's nice to see the support in both. I tend to work on Windows. I tend to stream from Windows, partly out of convenience, which I suspect at some level people are sort of dismissive of. You know, oh, you use Windows, blah, blah, blah. But I've used Windows for long enough that what you're saying, Tony, you don't have to fight the setup. I know most of the issues. So in some cases, it makes sense for me to do little tweaks, little fixes, and I'll PR those up. And the cross-platform situation in the JavaScript ecosystem, TypeScript, whatever ecosystem, and Rust ecosystem have gotten a lot better. Rust has always had pretty good support for Windows. So most of my Rust I actually write in native Windows. Yeah, most of my Rust I think I end up doing in native Windows. So that's been nice. Like there are projects that are very much set up to not have, or set up with the expectation that you're running it on Mac or something. In that case, I'll just use my Mac. But all the Bevy tools work better in Windows. Also, I can kind of see that because support for like graphics and video games in Windows seems to be the best of the like three operating systems. You know, I'm bucketing Linux into an operating system, but all the different implementations in Linux mean that that's not a realistic way to bucket them, but it seems like Windows is sort of on top for that. So I can definitely see Bevy working well in Windows. I'm assuming native. When you say Windows, you mean native Windows. That would make sense to me. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know that there's too much else. A bit of a, I think we brought this up on stream in the past. So the other some other frameworks that allow you to write an app and use a web view end up using Chromium, CEF. So there's, I can think of multiple frameworks or apps that end up using a CEF embedded, or Chrome embedded, Chrome embedded framework. I think that's what CEF is. So at one point, UA had poked around with like, what does it look like to have bindings that work with that? And a bunch of the work's been done. So like, if that's really something that people are interested in doing, like, there's progress. So, you know, I don't know that it's actually going to end up going where unless there's interest from people, and you know, so if there's other people that are interested in pushing it forward, then it might become a reality. But at the moment, I don't think I'm unaware of people that are interested in pushing this forward. So there's a Bevy meetup today. No, I'm likely not attending. I'm interested in Bevy, and it's cool to see where it's going. But I've bucketed any Bevy kind of game engine-y graphics type stuff into this is cool and I'll read the news on it, but I'm not gonna have time to make a game. So like realistically, there's not a ton of value in me like deeply learning Bevy. I poked around with it and I'm aware of it, and I've like done some tutorials and stuff. But the Chris Piscardi has stopped by the stream a bunch. They have a channel. Chris is big into Bevy, and I've done he's got rustadventure.dev, and he has a bunch of Bevy workshops in there, and I've done one or two of them there. Yeah, it just adds so much noise. Yep. So like my focus is Rust and, well, no, that's not a great way to. Rust is a big bucket. Tori and the Rust pieces that are sort of like 1 or 2 degrees off of what Tori is working on. So I used to do more with the actual Tori code, but these days I'm mostly doing admin stuff for the Tori foundation, I guess. And just that alone is like that takes up a lot of my free time. So it's like that, and then other random like JavaScript web dev type stuff. But pretty much like anything that I'm currently interested in, or like the general buckets that I'm interested in, is stuff that we've done on the stream at this point. So a whole bunch of Tori stuff and like little Rust pieces that are sort of attached to that in some way. We've done a fair amount of like JavaScript, React web dev type things, and some of that actually also is an extension from what Tori is. You can kind of group that under Tori if you squint. And then we've done a bunch of like 3D type things. So my personal background is I've got a structural engineering degree, master's in structural engineering, I guess. And with that, I got pretty involved in like 3D modeling, specifically around buildings, obviously. So I kind of have a background in that stuff. So like I've taught myself the beginnings of a Blender, and we did some Blender on stream. If you do !drop, I think down there, those, there we go. Hopefully those commands work. But the !drop is, we have an overlay on stream, which is React 3 Fiber. React 3 Fiber is a WebGL library written on top of 3JS. 3JS is sort of the lowest level abstraction over the top of WebGL. And you can, out of Blender, export a GLTF file in which you can load that into a React 3 Fiber scene. Do you know when we get Tori Beta? You know this week, but you can't wait. I am not committing to anything. I think Daniel sent out that tweet saying that we're gonna release it this week, and I'm like, that's a commitment. That is now a commitment. It's close though. I mean, honestly, even playing with the alpha, I think you have a pretty decent idea where the beta is going to be. The big switch from alpha to beta is I think we have the bulk of the security stuff cleaned up. So the one thing that we've always found important with Tori is the security aspect of it. We want to make sure that what we're releasing is going to allow people to build a secure app kind of by default. At least that's the ideal that we're working towards. You can always fight that. You can always build an insecure app, but we want to make it easy for people to build secure apps, so it's not a trade-off. And one aspect of that is auditing code. For V1, we had all the code audited by a third party, and we're also doing that for V2. So part of that switch to beta is more expectation around things being stabilized, but also I think that audit is done. I need to check in on that. I haven't been involved with the audit process much this time around. The folks that a lot of this work, especially on these like lower level libraries and whatnot, all these folks work with Crab Nebula, and Crab Nebula has been there's a couple folks that work with Crab Nebula that are on the main Tori team, and they've been handling this interaction with the security team. Yeah, and when we were establishing the foundation for Tori, we wanted to make sure it always stayed in the open source. We want to make sure that it's always kind of a public good. But there's a lot to do. So Crab Nebula doesn't control Tori, but there's a lot of people in Crab Nebula that are being paid by Crab Nebula to work on the project. So I don't have a problem saying, check out what Crab Nebula is doing, and because they're basically funding full-time devs to work on the project, which is great. And I think something that I'm personally interested in is making sure that as a Tori Foundation, we want to push or set up things in a way that other corporations can easily opt into that sort of arrangement, where we can have more full-time devs being paid to work on the project. Because I mean, let's be real, this project is huge. we're not gonna make it happen by free time. It's gonna go slow. It'll take a long time free time, and we're gonna burn out a lot of people, and I don't want to do that. when we were setting up the foundation, we didn't want to put ourselves in a situation where one company could like control the whole ecosystem. And that was always the intent of like that separation. But we want to enable or make it easy for corporations to opt into basically sponsoring dev time on the project, because that's going to be the way that we I think for the most part that's going to be the way that we can have the best relationship with making sure not to burn out devs, getting some very concerted, focused effort on something, and pushing the project forward. So does the Tauri name come from the Taurus constellation from the Crab Nebula? There is, I mean, you might see, like, what does that logo look like? We'll see if I can actually pull up like the Wikipedia page on it, but there is a is it this? There's a binary star that is, oh my. Google knows that I'm trying to get the Tauri app. Binary star system. There's a binary star system. Gosh, this was kind of out of the brain of Daniel, so he knows it offhand. But there's a and it might be in a Crab Nebula. There is definitely the space thing going on there, but there's a binary star group that is sort of the background of it. The Crab Nebula. I thought Crab Nebula was like a subset of types of nebulas, but I guess there is a specific one. Taurus, a pulsar wind nebula in the constellation of Taurus. Yeah. So Taurus binary star? Taurus constellation? I don't know if I'm gonna be able to pull it up. Daniel like has the Wikipedia entry like memorized, I swear. The T Tauri variable star. This might be it. It's something like that though. So the logo is effectively like two binary stars. And we kind of built off of that idea, because so Tauri is sort of like the thing, the ecosystem, or the like that space gravity well around it, and then Tauri apps / Tau. Tau was one piece of it. Rye is the other piece of it. So the combination of Tau and Rye and the ecosystem around that is Tauri. So the background or the history of the logo and the name is sort of space themed in that binary star group. And Crab Nebula is, natural extension off of that. So yeah, beta is close. Beta is definitely close. And I think actually, speaking of, is it going to be on? They might actually just have it on their website. Let's go to their website. I think they have an announcement today. No. Crab Nebula. Is it an IO? I don't remember. We'll make it happen. I'm not sending in Twitter on this computer, so we'll see how far we can get here. Yeah. Is it .dev? Okay, thank you. We have got so many TLDs now. Top level domain for those that are not aware. TLD. I can never keep any of it straight anymore. Do they not have I thought they would have an announcement here. Twitter.com/ we might have to pull up Twitter on another browser. Oh, stop it. It's not Crab Nebula. Is it Crab Nebula Dev? It's like a person. Here we go. Yeah. Alright, I'll just can grab this, bring it over for the moment. Here we go. Video. We're not gonna watch it on stream. But that was the thing that they announced today. They've got a cloud product. So part of, and this is something that I've always wanted to see the DX around it improved. But it's really difficult to do that unless you do something like this. Building the app, getting it into a place where the users are going to find benefit in it is like a whole level of effort. But the ecosystem around shipping it and updating it is not, like the DX around that is could use some work. And I never felt like there's a good way to handle that in Tori, which makes sense because now you're sort of relying on, like one of the value propositions of something like Steam or that Epic Game Store for games is the company creates a game, puts it on the store, and that store is handling payments, that store is handling the assets, and the assets both in initial purchase and downloading of it, but the updating too. And those two pieces, the storing the assets and handling the update process, or at least being the endpoint to where you can grab the assets for the update, you almost have to have like a hosted service to make that easy. And it's never going to preclude somebody from doing this themselves. And one of the first implementations we did was to basically have a cheap way to wire it up to get a GitHub release. And that works to some level of scale, but at some point, like if you're shipping a real like production app that you expect hundreds of thousands of people to use, that's not going to scale. So I'm excited to see what they come up with. If you do it right, people would rather use it than build their own. Yeah, and that I think that's what I appreciate here. This isn't. I mean, it's kind of in the same vein of like the whole Jamstack ecosystem became a huge thing, and everybody made these frameworks, and then the way they monetized their effort was getting VC funding to create a host, like they did the set up a whole hosting environment. This is a little bit in the same way, but I feel like it's not. This as a service is not nearly as saturated as like throwing up a website host. And I think there's additional value that you can kind of like bring to that situation. So I'm excited to see what they end up coming up with, and I think it's going to be useful for a lot of people that just want to ship an app, especially like single devs or whatnot. I don't know what the pricing model is or anything like that, but as they release more information, I'm definitely excited to see where they take it. Not only from like what is that going to look like for a single dev using it, but like at what point is it going to make sense to actually run your own thing? Yeah, you can grok AWS using CDK, but like at some point, you know, like it's equivalent to like, does it make sense for me to stand up my own Kubernetes cluster in Google Cloud Platform and run my own, you know, sharded version of Postgres? Maybe. If you have the scale for those economics to make sense, maybe. Exactly like you said, though. It might just make sense to use Netlify and use, you know, PlanetScale DB or something. So check it out. We'll see where it goes. We'll see. I would kind of like to do a little bit more and explore what they're working on here, but I think that's it I got. We shall be back next week. I'm not sure what my schedule is going to look like for the next handful of weeks, as far as content goes. But I think we've got a bunch of little things that we can look into, and I've got some. I would like to bring on some more guests, but TBD. I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good rest of the week. I can never find my button. Have a good rest of the week. Bye.